Welcome to today's custom deep dive. So, the source material today is this really powerful excerpt simply titled Text.
Yeah, it's an incredibly raw piece of writing.
It really is. And our mission today is to unpack the intense metaphorical war happening inside the mind, specifically when you're dealing with clinical depression, alcohol dependency, and ARFID.
Right. ARFAD being avoidant restrictive food intake disorder.
Exactly. It's an intense sensory-based avoidance of certain foods.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because, well, if you're listening right now and navigating this kind of internal struggle, we want to acknowledge that it is incredibly difficult.
Truly. You are definitely not alone in this. And to understand how to end this inner war, we first have to figure out who is actually fighting.
Right. Who are the combatants here?
Well, the text describes existing in this state of constant inner violence. And this happens because you're operating with almost zero resources. I mean, think about the physical reality for a second.
Yeah, your body is just completely depleted. Exactly. When ARFED severely restricts your nutrition, and then depression completely drains your emotional energy, your nervous system is essentially running on empty.
So your threshold for just handling everyday life is basically zero.
Zero. And that means ordinary sensory inputs, like bright lights or loud noises, even certain textures, they suddenly feel like literal physical attacks.
Oh, wow. So everything just hurts.
Yeah, and it creates this battlefield between two conflicting inner voices. So first, you have what the author calls the mechanic.
Okay, the mechanic.
Right. This is the part of the brain that gives orders. It demands more pressure, always trying to forcefully fix the broken system. It's the voice barking at you to, try harder, get out of bed, just eat.
I mean, is this basically like trying to fix a broken car engine by just screaming at it? Which inevitably just causes another part to catch fire out of pure stress.
That's a brilliant way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
Yes. And that fire brings us to the second voice, which is the firefighter.
The firefighter, right. So if the mechanic causes the system to overheat, is the firefighter basically the hard crash that forces everything to shut down just to save the motherboard?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
The firefighter represents your maladaptive coping mechanisms.
Hmm.
In this specific text, it's alcohol.
Okay.
When the mechanic's relentless pressure leads to this overwhelming sensory fire, the alcohol is desperately deployed to just rush in and douse the flames. It numbs the distress.
Wait, I mean, calling a ceasefire between these parts sounds great in a deep dive, but when you're actually in the middle of a sensory panic attack, how do you just stop fighting? Isn't that, infinitely easier said than done?
Oh, absolutely. But what's fascinating here is the solution outlined in the text is completely counterintuitive to everything the mechanic believes.
How so?
Well, you don't need more orders from the mechanic. You don't try to willpower your way out of it. You actually need a ceasefire, which you achieve through aggressive sensory management.
So like treating the environment instead of yelling at the brain.
Precisely. You dampen the sensory attacks by seeking out calm, right? Total darkness, absolute quiet, or using specific sensory aids to block out the noise.
Just turning down the volume on the world?
Yes. By physically lowering that crushing sensory input, the nervous system stops registering those attacks. The fires simply don't start as often.
And if there's no fire, the firefighter, the alcohol just doesn't need to be dispatched.
Exactly. It takes away the trigger.
That shifts the entire burden. I mean, it really aligned with a line from the excerpt that really struck me. Waking up to the realization that it is genuinely just damn hard to be you right now, that's the vital first step.
It is. It replaces that intense internal pressure with self-compassion.
Right.
And understanding this dynamic is a huge breakthrough. But the text makes a really crucial point here. This insight is merely a tool.
It's not the finish line.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Because this situation involves deeply complex interlocking challenges, right? Alcohol, depression, ARFID. So the most loving thing your wake core can actually do is seek professional support.
Yeah, you aren't meant to carry this heavy insight all by yourself.
Exactly. Professional help is what helps you maintain that ceasefire.
I love that. And to you listening, giving yourself permission to seek professional help isn't a surrender to the mechanic. It is the ultimate act of self-care. You're calling in reinforcements so your mind doesn't have to be a war zone anymore.
100%.
Which really leaves us with this to think about.
Mhm.
If our darkest coping mechanisms have spent years acting as an emergency fire department, what new, entirely different role could that fierce protective energy take on once the fires are finally out?